Hey, remember when baggy jeans were all the rage? Like, so baggy you could smuggle a Thanksgiving turkey in them? Good times. But then, somewhere along the way, skinny jeans waddled in, and suddenly our poor turkey had nowhere to hide. This, my friends, is the fickle finger of social norms at work. What's cool or acceptable is rarely a fixed point. It's more like a drunken game of limbo, constantly shifting and always a little bit painful. But who decides these things? Is there some shadowy council of elders dictating our fashion choices from a secret turtleneck-filled lair? If so, I'm not invited, clearly. The answer, like a pair of mid-rise jeans, is kind of complicated. Our brains, bless their little gray lumps, love a good shortcut. Thinking is hard. So we use mental shortcuts, called heuristics, to make snap judgments. Problem is, these shortcuts can lead us down some dodgy paths. Take the availability heuristic. We tend to overestimate the likelihood of things we see often or hear about a lot. See a news story about a shark attack? Suddenly, every fin in the ocean is Jaws. These mental shortcuts are part of why social norms can be so sticky. We see something enough times, we start thinking it's the right way to be. One view is that social norms are all about individual choice. You do you, boo. Want to wear a top hat to the grocery store? Go for it. Just don't be surprised if you get some side-eye from Brenda at the checkout. This is kind of like the voluntarist view of policy. People should be free to make their own choices, even if those choices are objectively terrible. Like, I'm all for personal freedom. But maybe we can agree that Crocs are not appropriate footwear for a wedding. Then there's social cognition. This is the idea that we learn by watching others. We see what they do. We see what happens to them, good or bad, and we adjust our behavior accordingly. This brings us to the social cognitive perspective, which throws a bit of a wrench in the monkey see, monkey do theory. Sure, we observe others, but we also think about what we see. We process it through our own personal filters of experience, values, and that weird thing. Your Aunt Carol said that one time. So, while social learning is definitely a thing, it's not as simple as blindly copying everyone else. We're not robots, unless you are, in which case, hello robot overlords. Big fan of your work. Now, let's talk about culture. Each culture has its own set of norms, like unspoken rules for how to behave. These rules can be about anything: personal space, table manners, how long to hold eye contact with a sheep before it gets weird. This is the socio-cultural perspective at work. It's like a giant game of telephone where norms are passed down through generations, getting a little more garbled and sometimes a lot weirder along the way. Our sense of self also plays a role in all this. We all have a self-concept, which is basically how we see ourselves, and we have schemas, which are like mental frameworks we use to understand the world. When our self-concept aligns with social norms, we feel good. We belong. But when there's a clash, that's when things get interesting. Do we conform or do we rebel? Do we embrace our inner weirdo, or do we quietly hide our collection of commemorative spoons? Some folks think the best way to ensure social order is through command and control policies. Basically, a bunch of rules and punishments designed to keep everyone in line. Think strict dress codes or laws against jaywalking. But here's the thing, people aren't always great at following rules, especially when they seem arbitrary or unfair. Plus, cracking down on every little thing can feel a bit dystopian. Do we really want to live in a world where you can get arrested for wearing socks with sandals? So, what's the solution? Well, there isn't one easy answer. But maybe, just maybe, we can start by being a little more mindful of the forces that shape our behavior. Let's challenge our own biases, question the status quo, and try to be a little less judgmental of others. And for the love of all that is holy, let's stop pretending Crocs are acceptable footwear for anything other than gardening.